When I correspond with MBI3030, he always makes comments such as, I have a weak strawman argument, and I have a theological presupposition, and I'm reading into the text. And two comments that persuaded me to make this video is when he said, I study under one of the top Greek scholars, and my Greek teacher laughed. I think he was referring to a comment I made when I told him adding the word other in the Greek text in Colossians chapter 1 verse 16 and 17 doesn't change the meaning through context, but makes it more clear to the reader how Jesus wasn't the originator of creation. But before I continue, I just want to mention there's an excellent video out there by a person that goes by the name of MBI3030, and he has a video entitled The Created Messiah, Part 1 and Part 2, and his presentation is thorough. He makes a comparison of Proverbs chapter 8 verse 22 through 30 and Colossians chapter 1 verse 15 through 18. I would certainly recommend his video. In this presentation, I'm directing it to MBI3030 since he's implying he is a Greek student, so I don't think reading the Greek text would be a problem for you then. Also be using one of your Bible preference, the English Standard Version. And my whole point is to show you how Jesus is the literal firstborn and how adding the word other doesn't change the context in Colossians chapter 1 verse 16 and through 17. There are a few key terms I want you to pay attention to. The terms are icon, prototokos, diatou, and proton. These are key terms to prove Jehovah's Witnesses' position that Jesus is the literal firstborn, and adding other doesn't change the context. But just to prove you did claim firstborn means preeminent, because I've been told by another individual that you never claimed this. But here it is how you did claim this.
How do we correct this misinterpretation? Firstborn does not carry the meaning first created. Remember, Jewish context, Paul's the author, he's writing as a Messianic Jew. In biblical times, the word meant first in rank or preeminence. King David was actually the last born, King David was the last son of Jesse. Yet he was called the firstborn because he had preeminence as a son. He had preeminence as a son in Psalms 89 verses 27. Christ is preeminent.
Let me demonstrate how Jesus is the literal firstborn. Colossians chapter 1 verse 15, and it reads, Hosestin icon tu diou tu aratu prototokos pases ketisios. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. The first key word here is the first part, how Jesus is referred not as God, but as the icon, the image of God. That alone just proves your point. Others have claimed since Jesus is the image of God, then he must be God. But they ignore how Adam was also created in the image of God. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. And in the Greek Septuagint we have kaite akonatiu, according to the image of God. So because Jesus is the image of God, it doesn't qualify him to be equal to God. Jesus is the reflection of God, not God himself. Since Adam was the first created human being, and he was the image of God, how much even so Jesus, the very firstborn of Jehovah, is the exact image of God. Again, not God, but the icon, the image of God. The next word we can look at in this verse is prototokos. This passage is disputed whether prototokos means first in line of creation as the context shows, or preeminent one as most Trinitarians will have you believe. The problem with Trinitarians have regarding prototokos is Jesus is not appointed as firstborn as King David was in Psalms chapter 89 verse 27. And I will make him the firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. Colossians doesn't say he is appointed firstborn, but he is the firstborn of all creation. Of all the places where firstborn is referred to in the New Testament, where do we see Jesus is appointed as firstborn? As I stated, you won't be able to find it because Jesus is the literal firstborn of God, the beginning of the creation by God. Otinato ekdiste tai pantai en tois oranois kai epiteskes tai horatai kai tai aorata ete oranoi ete korietetes ete rakai ete exousiai tai pantai dia atu kai aisaton ekdistai. For by him all things were created, in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. Now the key word here is dia ato, through him. This is through Jesus all things were created. This is showing Jesus isn't the initiator of creation, but there's another that created through him. This is an indisputable point. For example, Hebrews chapter 1 verses 1 through 2 reads, Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through dia, whom also he created the world. So here the point regarding adding the word other and the New World Translation doesn't change the context, because the initiator of creation is God the Father. He creates through the Son. Colossians chapter 1 verse 16 in the New World Translation, because by means of him all other things were created in the heavens and upon the earth, the things visible and the things invisible, no matter whether they are thrones or lordships or governments or authorities. All other things have been created through him and for him. The New World Translation is accurate because Jesus created all other things, an exception to one he is the image of, the one who existed before him, and that is his God, the Father, Jehovah. It's accurate either way you translate it, because the New World Translation just happens to be more clear, showing that Jesus created all other things because his God Jehovah created him before all things. Jesus is the firstborn, prototokos. Verse 17. Kai tosestin pro panton kai tai pantai enaton sunistikin. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. New World Translation, also he is before all other things, and by means of him all other things were made to exist. Through context again, we just established how Jesus isn't God, but the icon, the image of God, and Jesus is the very firstborn being Jehovah created. An exception to his God and Father, Jesus is before all things, or all other things.